bids are in. The gavel is dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is WineBid's podcast dedicated to all things wine value, wine retail, wine auctions, and just wine. I, of course, am Jeff McGurn here on WineBid's marketing team. With me, as always, is our wine and wine auction expert, Paul Walker. Welcome to the podcast, Paul. This, of course, is our recap episode. We're going to talk about everything that happened in the auction this last week. And so, Paul, let's jump right into, we've got a lot to cover. Let's jump right into what happened this last week.
Good.
Let's talk about the wines that got a lot of bids. One thing, I mean, this one is a low value wine, but we had a Domaine Claude Raffol Sancerre that had, we had two of them. They had 10 bids, started at 20, went up to 37, almost doubling, or sorry, 36 actually, almost doubling, hammering at $36. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, hey, if you had purchased, on release, if you had only purchased like a few thousand cases of those, you'd be rich right now.
Are you giving unsolicited investment advice on this podcast, Jeff?
I'm not giving unsolicited investment advice. I am just stating a fact.
Are you saying that 17 Sancerre is the way? Should we buy all the 17 Sancerre we can find?
You said that. All I'm saying is this. The 17 Sancerre started at $20 and went to $37. And now my dog is in the podcast.
It's okay. It's good to have dogs in. They drink wine also.
I actually did buy some wine for my dog once. There's this company I think it's out of, I can't remember where they're out of, but they make a wine for dogs, and they have a Malbec and a Cat Bernet Sauvignon.
Oh no, I can see that coming. Yeah, no, I think Claude Raffol is like, this is like serious Sancerre. Well, just look at the bottle. It's got a fancy label. It's got a wax top. It's got a vintage tag. No, I mean, I'm being kind of silly, but this is a well-known small producer, and I think it was frankly a deal at auction, and so it got bid up accordingly because I think you'd pay more than $20 retail for it. So something closer to $40 makes a lot of sense. Good wine.
What about 2018 Domaine de Roche, Gevrey Chambertin, Lavaux Saint-Jacques?
Yeah, that got bid way up.
This started at 135.
Yeah.
Bids took it to 360.
360. Yeah. Well, de Roche is no joke. These wines are expensive. And de Roche, excuse me. And
de Roche, please. Sorry.
There's an accent aigu there. You gotta make sure it's pronounced. Anyway, small production, cult following, Burgundian producer that, we don't see a lot of, nobody sees a lot of, I don't care what you say. And so I think the 18, in fact, is the only vintage we've sold of this wine. So de Roche wines are, few and far between.
What about this 2019 Frédéric Mognin?
Yeah, another one. It did double price.
It did double. I mean, it started 107 bids to $200.
19 Burgundies, right, are just so much more expensive than even just a couple years prior, even like 15, 16, 17s. They're way, 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 way more out the gate, and not a lot of wine available, period. So I think also the property value of Le Chambertin's vineyard is probably, more per cluster of grapes than this bottle costs. I mean, it's something insane. I heard some insane quote about how much the vineyard property is actually worth per hectare. But in any event, this is not expensive for Chambertin, regardless of who's making it. And Frédéric Mognin, it's like not, it's not first or even maybe second tier, depending on who you talk to. But that, $200 for Chambertin from 2019 from a respectable producer is not terribly expensive.
Grand Cru. I mean, we've got a 94 Chateau Simone Palette Rouge. This one, 6 bids took it from 25 to 83.
Yeah, that's like, I think this is just rarity more than anything else. This producer, Chateau Simone's known for their rosé, and it's very good, and it will last a long time. It's kind of like Tempier in that sense. It's collectible, and the red wine is kind of similar, I want to say, to Tempier Res as well, right? So it's age worthy.
Yeah.
It's very small production. We don't see a lot of it. I think we haven't sold very many bottles of this. I think the last time the 94 was in auction was in 2009. So it's not something you're gonna be able to replace very easily.
We had some more of the 2014 DeRoche, Gevrey Chambertin, Le Beau Saint-Jacques. We had 3 of those that started at 180, hammered at 260.
Right.
After 6 bids. And then...
Yeah, I mean, the 18 is definitely a stronger red vintage, also probably smaller production in smaller yield, I would imagine, just as a harvest is concerned. So cheaper for the 14 red than the 18, but still, I mean, that's not crazy. That's not crazy for a very small production wine.
And then we've got 2019 Jean-Pierre Guillon, Gevrey Chambertin, Platier. 3 of those started at 70, hammered at 110-ish, right around there.
Yeah, another 19 red from a very small producer, sought after. Frankly, this didn't seem that expensive to me, just considering what some of the other wines are going for. Looks like right underneath that, I see there's a 19 Guillon Sauvignon Le Bon Le Pouillet, which to me, I'd probably spend a little bit more money on the Gevrey Platier than the Sauvignon, but hey, it's all no accounting for taste.
Let's switch over to some of our big sales.
Yeah, I did want to mention a little bit, speaking of a little bit more, well, let's say just sought after and micro production wine. There was another Pernod Vergelès, or excuse me, we didn't talk about Pernod, we talked about Sauvignon, but Pernod Vergelès from Les Oreilles, very small production stuff. There was quite a bit of it actually in last week. And the 19 Fichot sold for $320. It started at $225, so almost $100 in bids on a single bottle there. That was quite impressive. There was actually a pretty amazing kind of selection of really small production Burgundies in last week, and these Guillon wines are part of it. There was a lot of other Les Oreilles. There's Marchand Toss. There's all kinds of interesting stuff in. And as you can see, a lot of bids on that wine.
Yes.
And the other totally random, non-related example, there was a bottle of Theorem Sauvignon Blanc, which started at $25 and got bid up to 41, which I thought was interesting. Their red wines are very, very expensive, but I guess, for Napa Sauvignon Blanc, it was... looked like a deal, but then ended up getting ended
up being less of a deal.
Yeah, it's actually not from Napa either. It's Moon Mountain. Excuse me, it's from Sonoma. So anyway, but on to some of the heavy hitters. Is that where you were gonna? Yeah,
let's talk heavy hitters. We had 2 bottles of Screaming Eagle that sold 1997 Screaming Eagle Cabernet Sauvignon. They sold for $37.45 a bottle. So, that's pretty solid for
that's up there.
Yeah, that's up there. 1998 Domaine Romanée-Conti Echezot sold for $21.55, which I don't know if that seems like a low price, but it seems right in line with, I think, what we typically see Echezot from DRC sell for. All right, let's take a look at the stuff from last week that sold that were some of our higher priced items. We had an 07 Domaine Romanée Batard Montrachet 6 liter that sold for $59.20. So I know you in particular, Paul, you said you prefer your 07 Domaine Romanée Batard Montrachets from 6 liters, don't you? Like that's the only way you drink them. You just put a spigot on them and
exactly, just tip them over and
82 Petrus for $32.10.
Yeah, this is a bottle we mentioned last week, actually.
We did.
Yeah.
We did mention this last week.
And didn't last, but I mean, didn't get multiple bids, but obviously went for reserve, which I think is kind of right where it's going right now.
2013 100-acre fume for between 6 bottle lot ODBC went for $3,030, which I think is
that's a lot.
That's a good amount for 100 acre. I mean, you're talking $500 a bottle, right?
Right.
Over $500 a bottle. 2013 Sloan Proprietary Red 6 bottle lot OWC went for, actually had 2 bids, started at $25.20, went for $27.10. 20. We had a 2010 DRC Echezot went for 2,600. What are your thoughts on 2,600 2010 Echezot? I mean, is that priced right there? I mean, clearly somebody bought it.
Right. I think it's, it's in line. It's a high hammer, I think, in terms of historically. It hasn't been in auction for a few months. So that's, it's good to see that it's selling for more than it did last year. So it's not like prices come down at all. It was pretty consistent throughout the years, and then it's gone up substantially. It was, I don't know, 1,750 back in beginning of 2021, and then got up to 2,500 last year, and then 2,600 on Sundays. So yeah, I think that's in line. Sloan, that you mentioned, is kind of interesting that they got bid up. That wine, I think, was it seemed like it was a really big deal back in early 2000s when it came out. So obviously we haven't seen the 13 in a little while. It's now a 10-year-old vintage and fantastic vintage in Napa. So that was fun to see. Let's see.
What do you make of the price differential between the 06 Petrus that sold for 2,460? It had two bids actually, bid up from 2,360 to 2,460 versus like the 82 Petrus that sold for 3,210.
Well, I don't know. I mean, 82, it's a legendary vintage, and not just left bank Bordeaux, but right bank examples as well. But it's also it's no spring chicken anymore. Some of these wines are, they'll probably last a long time, but I think that maybe some of their value was a little bit pushed out, out of the stratosphere a while ago, and it's kind of come back to earth, as it were. And 06, much, much younger vintage, will probably slowly increase in price over the years. I'm not sure it's going to ever shoot up like the 82 did, but it'll continue to hold its value, I think, for quite a while.
2015 100-acre, few and far between vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon, 6-bottle lot OWC. This one sold for 2,430. A little bit less than, quite a bit less than the
13. 13's, it's probably score driven too, I would imagine. I think the 13 got 100 points from Parker or whatever.
Most likely.
It did.
Speaking of 2013s from Napa, 2013 Paul Hobbs, Beckstoffer, Tokalon, Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah, that's surprising to me. That seemed really, really high. Again, I'm sure it's a score-driven wine. Yeah, Parker and Suckling, 100 points both. But still, that's a serious price for Paul Hobbs. I mean, those wines have been going up in price for a long time. And even the Appellation release Cabernet is, I think, out the door retail now is like, I don't know, 150 or something dollars. So for Tokalon from 13, 2130s, what you're going to pay for a, double 100 pointer. That 87 Dunhouse, that's probably my favorite bottle from last week.
We talked about this 5 liter.
Did we mention it? I don't think we even got a chance to talk about California last week. But
you know what? We may not have mentioned it, but I had it on my list to mention. And I thought it was interesting because it was a 5 liter, and I feel like you don't see 5 liters as much as you're seeing 1.5, 3, 6, 9, like multiples of 1.5, basically, or 750. So I thought that one was super interesting. Obviously, 87 is a great vintage out of Napa.
Yeah,
great producer, but cool party bottle, right?
Oh yeah, I know. These are awesome. And like it's got an etched back label, and it's etched with Randy Dunn's signature, and they're numbered and everything. So yeah, very cool packaging, and yeah, like you said, rare format and very collectible. That would be a fantastic bottle to bring to a big party.
And I don't feel like 2,000 is that crazy of a price for that. No. Not too bad at all. I mean, I'm sure you also noticed, like, this week was like a week of Petrus. There's a 75 Petrus, 2,188 Petrus that went for 2,000, a 76 Petrus that went for 1,800.
Yeah, there's a lot of Petrus in last week.
Somebody liked Petrus or didn't like Petrus because they got rid of all of it. But I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like we don't see like this much Petrus come into, like usually if Petrus trickles into auction, I feel like it's 1 or 2 bottles, but here it just seemed like, it was like 4, 5, 6 bottles of Petrus that just flooded into the auction. I mean, that for Petrus, I feel like that's a bit of a flood. right? And then we had Tusk.
Yeah, 19 Tusk. I was going to mention this. We don't see it too often. Kind of a very sort of, I would say, under marketed cult wine. You just don't see a lot of buzz about it. And I don't think these wines get rated all that. I mean, they do get rated. They have scores. I don't think the 19 actually has any scores. If it does, they weren't published yet, but or at least not on the site. But anyway, it's got quite a following, and it got multiple bids. Yeah.
And it came OCC. That's original cardboard case.
Got it.
Those of you who are unfamiliar with the nomenclature. And then we had 2017 Emmanuel Rougeau, Von Romani, Crow.
Rouget, actually. Rouget. Not Rougeau. It's Rouget, different producer.
I was testing you, and you passed. Congratulations. This one, sold for $1,800. And then I'll just mention that we had 2016 Cinnacanon non-11 confession. Okay, I'm not going to say the whole thing, not because I can't pronounce it, but because I just don't want to waste time. 6-bottle horizontal OWC. This one, 2 bids took it from 1755. Actually, we had 2 of them to a little below 1855. We sold 2.
Oh yeah, was this did you say the 16?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did see that. So that's been out. That's been, let's say, out of commission or out of release or whatever you want to call it. Circulation, I guess, would be the word. For quite a while, for at least a couple of years, 3-4 years, and yeah, that's actually it's interesting to see Sine Qua Non, get multiple bids again. It's like I think there's been a lot of it recently in the secondary market. They obviously make more wine. They have the 11 Confessions, which they don't call estate because I think they actually own the other vineyards that they use for their other labels. So, there's just more wine and maybe less kind of, sort of insane cult following after that wine than there used to be. And there's just more around to go around. So it's always kind of an interesting indicator to see, something with a few years on it get a couple bids. So that's a good sign.
You heard it here from Paul Walker. There's just a ton of Sine Qua Non to go around. We're just flooded with Sine Qua Non. Anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap this up?
And I think there's, some other pretty fantastic wines. 16 Roumier Bonmar. There's a bottle of that hammered at $1,500. There's some O2 Jacques Salas. Let's see.
Your favorite? You love Jacques Salas. I know that.
Well, that actually, did you see this one? It did get bid up from $850 to $1,500. Yeah. So that's pretty serious.
It's an O2. O2.
Yeah.
Epic vintage.
And it's disgorged in 2012. So it's already been 10 years, since, let's just say probably about 10 years since it was released on the market. So not an easy bottle to replace if you wanted to try today. 01 Reyes, $1,350. It's always fun to see how crazy Reyes continues to sell for. We talked about this.
You can either buy it now you can either buy it now on Wine, or you could have bought it now on WineBid, or you could have bought it at Cost Plus World Market.
That's right.
20 years ago.
Cost Plus had Reyes, they had Foncelet, they had stacks and stacks of the Foncelet Syrah. For $40 a bottle, but those days are gone. Let's see. Les Oreilles, we talked about. There was some Gervais, Chambertin, Reniard 19. Looks like a couple of those hammered for nearly $700 a piece. They started at $480. A couple of people just got into a bidding war there. But still really, really small production, very sought after wine. We talked about the other Les Oreilles wine as well that got bid up pretty substantially. Pernam Vergelès, I think it is. And then let's see, there were some other 07 Reyes as well at $1,200. Let's see, a couple bottles of Marxen, 11 Montevertini Pergola Torte. That's always kind of fun because it gets bid up quite a bit, but it looks like sold for $230 a piece. I don't see that every 890. Chave Hermitage, another one of those, hammered at 1150. I think there was one in a week or two ago.
There were a bunch of we've had those trickling in, and they've been selling pretty strong.
Yeah, it's like not just current release stuff, but yeah, something with a little bit of time on it. So the 90 is probably phenomenally good now. 59 Margaux was in last week also for 1050 at hammered. 02 Krug for what, 525, I think. Yeah, so just some really amazing wines, and always fun to review what's been in.
Yes, it is. And with that, folks, we're going to wrap up our auction recap, but we'll be coming at you later this week with our picks and some interesting discussions about stuff we're seeing coming at auction. With you as always, I am Jeff Gurn, and this has been Paul Walker. And of course, this has been Finally Hammered. So we wish you happy bidding, and cheers.
Cheers.